Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And thank you. I'm going to go into the share. And this week we are studying the very last parsha of Genesis. Always a sort of a bittersweet moment. And essentially, we've resolved the story of Joseph that was took over 3 weeks to go through, and now we are in Parshat vaY'chi, and because it's called vaY'chi, it means and he lived, and essentially we're talking about the departure, the death of Jacob, and subsequently Joseph as well. So it's interesting, like for Chaye Sarah, we're talking about the death of Sarah. And at the end of that parsha, we talk about the passing of Abraham, that it's associated with this word Chayim, right? Which is a plural, right? A duality, Chayim, like Ofnayim means a bicycle, or Einayim means eyes. It talks about pairs. So Chayim talks about the pairing of this life, and I suspect the next one. So we're here, we are into the Parsha. It starts off with Jacob realizing that his life is coming to an end, and he summons Joseph, and Joseph brings his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, to see Jacob, and Jacob blesses those sons, and he also tells Joseph how he is going to give him an extra portion because he's the firstborn of his beloved Rachel. So here it is, right, coming right into this here. This is Jacob speaking to Joseph. But ani, as for me, natati lecha Shechem echad. I should possibly say that even though this is a relatively short parsha, it is a difficult parsha. The meanings are hidden. It's and here's an example right here, whether there is a double meaning to the Shechem echad. Shechem echad. I have given to you a Shechem Achad, which could be translated, and Rashi's going to play with this both ways. It could mean the place, which we know, we've already come across it, the place called Shechem, right? And we know about the incident that took place at Shechem. It involved Dinah, you may recollect, and then the killing of the population of the men of Shechem, the inhabitants of Shechem. So Shechem Achad, one Shechem. So if Shechem is the name of a place, one Shechem sounds interesting as to what that could possibly mean. But as well, I'll let Rashi explain it. Al achecha, over your brothers, asher lakachti, which I took miyad ha'emori, from the hand of the Amorite. And again, there's all kinds of questions you can put in here because did he in fact take it, or was it in fact Shimon and Levi who essentially led that particular sortie? At any rate, that's what he's saying here. And we could answer quickly by saying, in a way, of course, that if his sons did it, it was something he did. But we also know that Jacob wasn't happy about that. He really felt embarrassed and not happy. So anyway, Becharbi uvakashti, with my sword and with my bow. So let's take a look at the Rashis. And the Rashis tend to be long on these in this particular portion because of the fact that it's hard to make out exactly. So, Ba'ani natati lacha, and as for me, I have given to you. Lefi she'ata torech. So this is actually very lovely. It says, because you are going to occupy yourself, go to the trouble. That's the idea, right? That you're troubling yourself. Lehit asek bikfurati. Remember that what Jacob had extracted from Joseph was a promise that he would not be buried, that he would not bury Jacob in the land of Egypt, that he would take him back to the cave of Machpelah in the land of Canaan. And so, since he had commissioned Joseph busy himself and to take the trouble of doing this. It's in a sense Rashi is quoting the Midrash as to the quid pro quo. This is the reward he's getting for the fact that he was going to this trouble of bekvurati, in my burial. V'gam ani natati lacha, and I for myself natati lacha, am giving to you nachala, an inheritance, shetikaber ba, in which you will be buried. The ezuzo, and what place are we talking about? Shechem. That is, in fact, where Joseph is buried. And I suspect, well, let me finish this up. Shineemar, as it states, Yehoshua Kafdalit in Joshua chapter 24, Ve'et Atzmot Yosef, and the bones of Joseph's remains, Asher Helu Bnei Israel, which the children of Israel brought up from Mimitzrayim, from Egypt, Kavru B'Shechem. They buried in Shechem. And so we read at the very last chapter of Genesis how Joseph tells them how God is going to bring them out of Egypt and to be sure to take his remains with them when they go up out of Egypt. So here is Joseph, who's had such a magnificent experience in Egypt, but not wanting to remain there and be buried there. And of course, there's significance about that. There also has to be some additional significance, I suspect, in the fact that we know about Shechem, that we have all that information about Shechem, and that in fact that's the incident that happened there and what that may symbolize, and have those things. I am not certain. I'd have to go back and check, but whether or not he was heading in that direction too when he was sold, but I need to go check. I could be wrong about that. But I'm trying to think to myself what literary associations we could have. But there's clearly significance when we're told specifically that Joseph is buried in Shechem. So, but we've got this expression, Shechem echad al achecha, okay? One Shechem over your brothers. So he says, Shechem mamash hi tieh lacha chelek. In other words, so he's saying Shechem mamash. What exactly he means here is, does he mean actual? Mamash means actual. Eshel Shechem, it shall be, the city of Shechem, tieh lacha, shall be for you. Chelek echad, a specific portion, one portion yetera, over and above alachecha, over your brothers. So I think Rashi is staying with the idea of Shechem being the city itself, but it's not going to end here. We're going to go on. See, Bacharbi uvekashti. So with my sword and with my sword and with my bow. Keshehargu Shimon v'Levi, when Shimon and Levi killed et Anshe Shechem, the population of Shechem, nitkansu kol svivotehem. So this is how Rashi explains, again, based on Midrashic material, how Jacob would say he did this, right? So kol svivotehem, all the surrounding population came together, lehizdaveg lahem, to unite against them, that is against Jacob and his family. V'chagar Yaakov kli milchama kenegdam, and Jacob girded on the weapons of war against them. So this is now understanding Shechem as referring to the city, the town itself. Davar acher, another interpretation. So alternatively, we go in a different direction. Shechem echad hi habechorah. So when we talk about Shechem echad, we are referring to the firstborn, additional, the bechorah, right? The firstborn portion. Sheitlu banav, that is to say that his sons should take shnei chalakim, a double portion. Ushchem lashon chelek, and this term Shechem also has a meaning of a portion. right? So it's got a double meaning, the meaning of the town of Shechem, but also Shechem meaning a portion. And that may have also some significance with regards to this town of Shechem and what it might represent. Okay, Lashon Chelek Hu. It has the meaning of a portion. Ketargumo, as is mentioned in the Targum. So let's take a look at the Targum for a moment. Here we are. Let's go back here for the Targum, right? But Ana Yehavit Lach, and I am giving to you Chulak. There it is, Chag Yatir, a portion, an additional portion. So the Targum goes completely with Chulak, a portion, and understanding the term Shechem as meaning a portion. So that's what Rashi is citing right now. Let's find this place here. Right. V'harbe yesh lo domim b'mikra. And Rashi says there are many other examples of this term Shechem meaning a portion. So it's not like out of the air. This is something that is a meaning that Shechem has. So he gives an example of Tehillim Kaf Aleph. This is Psalm 21. Ki tishitemu Shechem. For when you place them as a portion, and he's explaining what that means in the context of that psalm. Tashit sonai, you will place my enemies, those who hate me, the fanai lachalakim. You're going to break them into pieces. Is that chelek, right? That Shechem means chelek. So the enemies that I have, those who hate me, will be divided. Again, Psalm 60, Achalka Shechem, I will divide into pieces, into parts. And Hosea 6, Derech Yiratzchu Shechema, Ish Chalako. So I think that's Shechema, could be. Yeah, right. The way in which they will murder, Yiratzchu, Retzach is murder, Shechema, the parts, Ish Chalako, that is each man his part. And then Zephaniah 3, La'avdo Shechem Echad, to worship him in one part, in other words, to serve God united, right? That they are, instead of being divided, to worship God in unity. Asher lakachti miyad ha'emori, which I took from the hand of the Amorites. So he explains the Amorites here refer to Esav from Esau. So the Amorites were descendants of Esau, she'asa ma'aseh emori. And or if they weren't, he is saying that Esau, and this is sort of interesting. And again, the challenge of this particular section and its Rashis, right? But the point that he's making is that Esau was okay. I'm sorry, I'm processing this myself as I'm trying to explain it to you. So it could be that here he is not talking about Shechem, the city of Shechem itself, but he's referring back to the fact that he took the birthright, and those parts from the earlier parts, okay? And Esau and the Amorites are not the same, but rather that Esau practiced the types of behaviors of Amorites. So it's not that Esau and the Amorites are directly related, but rather Esau's behavior. And that Rashi's trying to deal with this difficulty that I mentioned earlier on, in that Jacob himself was not directly involved. And he's giving other explanations now as to trying to be able to account for this difficulty in the passage that we just read. Davar acher, another interpretation. Shahayat sad aviv be'imrei piv. So what he's saying is another reason for referring to Esau as an Amorite. Shayat sad aviv, he would hunt, that is, Esau would trick his father. Hunt literally is the term here, his father, be'imrei piv. There is the emori, right? The play on words with the words of his mouth. And we have this elsewhere. Earlier on, we talked about Esau the hunter and the interpretations that are given as to what kind of hunting Esau did, and expanding it from specifically about animals, but talking about hunting people as well in this way. Becharbi uvekashti, with my sword and with my bow. And here we're not talking about it. He chochmati utfilati. In other words, sword and bow is understood here as a metaphor, as metaphors for his wisdom, my wisdom, and my prayer, utfilati. And now there's one of these editorial comments to the Rashi here, trying to, again, what this is bringing out is the complexity of this Rashi that we're dealing with right now. Ve'ein ve're'aim, and check out the Re'aim, and I believe that's Eliezer Mizrahi, okay, Shekatav, who wrote, the Efshar lefaresh al chorbam shel Shimon veLevi, because you cannot say that when, this is the attempted explanation I gave earlier on, saying that since Shechem, going back to the idea of the city of Shechem, we know from the biblical narrative that Shimon and Levi were the ones who really carried this out. And how do we say then, how does Jacob say, my sword and my bow, when it wasn't his sword and it wasn't his bow, it was Shimon and Levi's? And I was saying, well, look, maybe perhaps we could say, well, since they were his sons. But then on the other hand, there was the other objection that he wasn't happy about it. He wasn't, and here he's talking as if he should get credit for it. Very, very difficult here. So the Re'aim is saying, you can't say it. You cannot take this literally. The Becharbi v'Kashti, you cannot take literally, because we talk about the sword of Shimon and Levi. Daha lo asu midato, lo aso midato. Lo asu, they didn't do, that is, Shimon and Levi did not perform this with his support. This wasn't his idea. This wasn't Jacob's idea for him to do this. Sharei ka'as alehem, right? As I mentioned, he was angry with them. Alzeh, regarding this behavior. I think this could be a transposition. I think this is actually a misprint, and I think it's really la'aniyat da'ati. And in my humble opinion, I believe that's what this should be. Belav pachi. Okay. You cannot say ifshar lefaresh elahem. So I think he's saying you cannot say that it's regarding them, that in fact, that he's referring to their taking the city. Because netiat ta'am yeh al shenatnu lenosef. Because if you're saying he's referring back to Shimon and Levi, and that somehow we're saying, well, despite all that fact, it was okay. It was he really was taking credit. That is, Jacob felt comfortable taking credit for it. Okay, but then we've got another problem. Why would he have given it to Joseph if, in fact, he approved of what Levi and Shimon did? Why would he give Shechem to Joseph? Because in fact Shimon and Levi took the city becharbam uvekashtam, with their swords and with their sword and with their bow. V'halo adraba, and in fact just the opposite. Mizeh hatam, if this is in fact what we're talking about, Shimon and Levi, ra'oi sheinaten l'Shimon v'Levi. He should have given it to Shimon and Levi, v'lo liYosef, and not to Joseph. Vidok, of course, we know generally means that this is a strong argument, a compelling argument. So again, I realize this is complicated, and I hope you were able to follow what I was sharing with you. But regardless, we come back from this saying, there are portions of the Torah that challenge us and require study and hard work, and eventually we're able to maybe get a better understanding of what's going on. So we came to the end of a parsha, to one of the portions here, and we're on to a new chapter. And this is the chapter where Jacob blesses his sons. And there's a difficulty with this. It's challenging. The language itself is poetic. The Hebrew changes to a poetic form of language. And also the fact that when we actually read the content of this, you wouldn't have classified it as a blessing. So we'll take a quick look at the beginning here, and we'll see what it says. Vayikra Yaakov el banav. So, right, this is the end of this little passage here with him and Joseph, and now we have a whole new episode. Vayikra Yaakov el banav. Jacob summoned his sons. Vayomer, and he said to them, He asvu, gather together. Va'agida lachem et asher yikra etchem va'acharit hayamim. And I will tell you that which will happen to you at the end of days. So this is sounding like he is going to give them a prophecy of what will happen in future time. And the problem here, just bristling with problems, right, is that isn't what he does, right? So let's take a look at the Rashi. This is one of the easier Rashis, right? Ba'agida lachem, and I will tell you. And Rashi is giving we have the citation, Bereshit Rabbah, Bikesh ligelot et haketz. He desired to reveal to them. Haketz would mean Ketz Yamim, the end of days. V'nistalka mimenu shchina, and the divine presence alighted from him. It disappeared from him. V'hitchil lomar dvarim achirim, and so he began to say other things instead, to tell them other things instead. Very interesting sort of statement, right, as to how one processes this. And this is where I'm going to leave it for today. And we'll start tomorrow. Well, actually with bit up here, which is a parallel passage, by the way, to what we just read there. And I'm going to stop the share. And if anyone is interested in any comments, any thoughts that you might have at this point. Yes, Shirabeth, are you raising a hand? You need to unmute.
I was actually adjusting my screen, but
it's good it's not an auction, right?
It does occur to me that in Hebrew, there's an expression in spoken Hebrew now of Shechem v'mala, which is a way of praising somebody and just saying they're like head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what came to mind. It's the idea that he's talking about the city seems kind of remote, because it's kind of unlikely.
Except for the fact that Joseph is buried there. And we know that, Abraham had to buy the cave of the Machpelah for himself and for a burial plot. So there is some support for that interpretation. And the truth is, of course, that it doesn't have to only have one meaning, right? There is some legitimate sense of ambivalence all over the place. I mean, I don't think it's limited to Hebrew literature. I think that literature itself, in a way, thrives on the possibility of more than one meaning to a statement. So, yeah, but I really appreciate you bringing in Shechem, or rather, Shechem v'mala. Yeah, sounds like it's connected. So, okay, I'm going to stop this recording here.